The wooden pew creaked like a breaking heart as David Hale shot to his feet, his voice slicing through the humid air of the First Baptist Church of Willow Creek like a thunderclap. "I'm your son," he shouted, the words echoing off the vaulted ceiling, freezing every soul in the sanctuary. 200 faces twisted in a mosaic of horror, confusion, and dawning betrayal. Reverend Jonathan Hale gripped the pulpit until his knuckles bleached white, his sermon on Sodom's fiery judgment dissolving into the abyss of his own unraveling legacy. David's chest heaved, the weight of 28 hidden years crashing down in that single, seismic revelation. He'd sat through 1,000 Sundays like this one, the summer sun of rural Indiana baking the clapboard walls while his father's voice boomed hellfire upon souls like his own, upon the love he'd buried deeper than the church's ancient foundations. The drive into Willow Creek always felt like descending into a sepia-toned memory, the kind that wrapped around you like kudzu vines, beautiful until they choked the life out. David gripped the steering wheel of his battered Ford pickup, the engine rumbling low as cornfields blurred past under the relentless July sky. It was 2005, and the world outside this Bible Belt bubble was cracking open. Ellen on TV, same-sex marriage whispers in Massachusetts, but here, in this speck of a town 50 miles south of Indianapolis, change moved slower than molasses in January. He hadn't planned on coming back. Not after the last fight, 2 years ago, when he'd stormed out of the parsonage with nothing but a duffel bag and a one-way Greyhound ticket to Chicago. But the letter had arrived like a ghost in his mailbox, penned in his father's meticulous script. "Come home, son. For the funeral. Your mother misses you." Except she couldn't, really. Cancer had taken her 6 months back, and David had learned of it through a terse email from the church secretary, forwarded like an afterthought. Now, as he crested the hill overlooking Main Street, its single stoplight winking lazily in the heat, he felt the old pull, that magnetic ache of roots too deep to yank free. The church steeple pierced the horizon first, white and proud against the blue, a sentinel over the lives it both sheltered and shattered. David's phone buzzed in the cup holder, a text from Austin. "You okay? Call me when you land. Love you, farm boy." A smile tugged at his lips, faint but real. Austin, tall, lanky, with that mop of blonde curls and a laugh that could disarm a room full of skeptics. They'd met at a dive bar in Wrigleyville, two lost souls nursing IPAs after bad days. Austin, a graphic designer from the suburbs, had leaned over with a napkin sketch of David's profile, captioning it Midwestern Mystery Man. 6 months later, they were shacked up in a third-floor walk-up, posters of indie bands peeling from the walls, takeout containers piling up like modern art. But Willow Creek wasn't Chicago. Here, love like theirs was whispered about in shadowed corners, condemned from pulpits, and buried in unmarked graves of the soul. David silenced the phone, pocketed it, and turned onto Elm Street. The parsonage sat at the end, a 2-story Victorian with gingerbread trim faded to the color of old lace. His father's truck was in the drive, polished to a gleam, Reverend Hale's one vanity, or so the town joked. Jonathan Hale opened the door before David could knock, his frame filling the threshold like a monolith. At 55, he was still broad-shouldered, his salt and pepper hair slicked back, eyes the color of storm clouds under heavy brows. "David," he said, voice gravelly with something unspoken, relief, resentment. He pulled his son into a hug that was stiff, perfunctory, the kind that spoke of duty over affection. "You made good time. Traffic was light," David replied, stepping back to survey the man who'd raised him on scripture and silence. The living room hadn't changed. Floral wallpaper peeling at the seams, a cross-stitched Proverbs 22 verse 6, above the mantel. Family photos lining the shelves, David at 12, gap-toothed and beaming beside his mother. At 18, in his high school football jersey, arms slung around his father's shoulders. No gaps for the years after, when David had fled to Purdue on a partial scholarship, majoring in agronomy because it was safe, practical, a way to till the earth without stirring the heart. They ate pot roast in the kitchen, the conversation a minefield navigated with forks and small talk. "Church is thriving," Jonathan said, slicing into the meat. "New youth group. 20 kids last Wednesday." David nodded, chewing mechanically. He knew the sermons by heart, the weekly broadsides against the homosexual agenda, the idol for lost boys ensnared by sin. It had started in the 80s, amid AIDS headlines, but never let up. David had endured them as a teen, biting his tongue until it bled, praying the feelings for the quarterback in gym class were just a phase. "And you?" Jonathan pressed, eyes narrowing. "Still in that design firm. Architecture," David corrected gently. It was a lie, half-true, Austin's world bleeding into his own. He'd taken a job at a firm to foot the rent, sketching blueprints for condos that would never house a family like theirs. "It's steady. Pays the bills." A pause, heavy as the humidity pressing against the windows. "Your mother would be proud," Jonathan said finally, but his gaze drifted to the empty chair at the table, where Evelyn Hale had once hummed hymns while peeling potatoes. She'd known, David suspected, those late-night talks when he'd come home bruised from fights he wouldn't name, her hand on his forehead like a benediction. But she'd never asked, and he'd never told. That night, David lay in his boyhood bed, the quilt smelling of mothballs and memories. Moonlight slanted through the lace curtains, casting shadows that danced like accusations. He pulled out his phone, dialing Austin under the covers like a guilty secret. "Hey, handsome." Austin's voice purred through the speaker, warm as a summer rain. "How's the prodigal son faring?" David chuckled, the sound foreign in the quiet house. "Like I'm 16 again, sneaking smokes behind the barn." "Dad's the same, sermonizing over supper." A beat of silence. "You gonna tell him? About us?" The question hung there, sharp as a hook. David traced the ceiling cracks with his eyes. "Not yet. Funeral's tomorrow. Don't want to salt the wound." Austin sighed, soft and understanding. "Okay. But promise me, don't let him bury you alive in there, Dave. You're more than his ghost story. I promise." They talked until the line crackled with fatigue. Austin recounting a disastrous client pitch, David laughing until his sides ached. It was ordinary, profound, the kind of love that bloomed in stolen moments. Coffee runs at dawn, tangled sheets on lazy Sundays, Austin's head on David's chest as they binge-watched Queer as Folk, whispering dreams of a house with a yard, maybe kids someday if the world caught up. Sleep came fitful, haunted by dreams of fire and brimstone, his father's voice morphing into thunder. Morning broke with the tolling bell, summoning the faithful to Evelyn's farewell. The church swelled with mourners, farmers in starched collars, widows dabbing eyes with lace hankies, the mayor intoning platitudes from the front row. David sat beside Jonathan, the casket a polished oak island amid the sea of black. The service blurred, hymns swelling like waves, eulogies painting Evelyn as the saint she was, pie baking, quilt sewing, soul saving. Then Jonathan rose, Bible in hand, to deliver the homily. His voice, that honed instrument of conviction, filled the space. Evelyn walked in grace, he began, steady as ever. She trained up our child in the way he should go. And though she's gone to glory, her light endures in this community, in the word of God that stands against the tempests of our age. David's pulse quickened. He knew the pivot, the seamless slide from tribute to tirade. And there it came. We live in perilous times, brothers and sisters. The enemy prowls, twisting love into abomination. Homosexuality, it's not just sin. It's a siege on the family, on God's design. We must stand firm, denounce it from our pulpits, our homes, our hearts. For the sake of our sons, our daughters. The words ignited something primal in David, a spark fanned to flame over decades of swallowed truths. His legs moved before his mind caught up, carrying him down the aisle, past whispering heads and clutching hands. He reached the center, turned to face the congregation, his father's eyes widening in the pulpit light. I'm your son. The declaration tore from him, raw and unbidden, the dam of his silence shattering at last. Gasps rippled through the pews like wind through wheat. Jonathan's face drained of color, the Bible slipping from his fingers to thud against the lectern. David, what is this madness? It's not madness, Dad. It's me. I've lived it, loved it, in secret for years. The boys I crushed on in high school, the man I share my life with now. Austin. He's real, Dad. We're real. And you've been preaching hate against your own blood. The sanctuary held its breath, a collective inhale that pressed against David's skin. Mrs. Hargrove, the organist who'd taught him scales as a boy, clutched her pearls. Old man Jenkins, who'd slipped him candy from his pocket during services, shook his head in disbelief. And Jonathan, oh, God, Jonathan stumbled forward a step, hand outstretched as if to ward off a demon. Sit down, son. This isn't the time. There is no time left. David's voice cracked, tears hot on his cheeks. Mom's gone, and you're still wielding that book like a weapon. I've tried to be the son you wanted, the straight-A student, the dutiful boy who nodded along to your rants. But I can't anymore. I won't. Chaos erupted then, a murmur swelling to shouts. Blasphemy! Someone cried from the back. Get him out. Another voice, softer. Lord have mercy. Jonathan descended the steps, face a mask of fury and fracture, seizing David's arm in a grip like iron. Enough. Outside. Now. They burst into the narthex, the heavy doors slamming shut behind them, muffling the din. The vestibule smelled of polished oak and wilted lilies from the casket spray. Jonathan released him, whirling with eyes ablaze. What in God's name possessed you? On your mother's funeral day. David rubbed his arm, the bruise already blooming. You did. That. Every Sunday. Every sermon. I came home to honor her, not to play pretend anymore. Jonathan paced, hands raking through his hair. This affliction, it's the devil's work. We'll pray it out of you. Counseling, fasting, whatever it takes. You're my son, David. I won't lose you to that filth. The word landed like a slap. David laughed, bitter and broken. Filth? That's what you call love? Austin. He sees me, Dad. Holds me when the world's too heavy. We build a life, brick by brick, in a city that doesn't stone us for it. And you've built walls higher than this steeple. Jonathan stopped, breath ragged. For a flicker, vulnerability cracked his armor. The man beneath the robe, grieving his wife, terrified of losing his legacy. I did it for you, he whispered. To protect you from this. David stepped closer, voice softening. Protection isn't chains. It's wings. The doors creaked open then, the deacons spilling out like a jury, faces stern. Reverend, the service. Handle it, Jonathan barked, waving them off. He turned back to David, resolve hardening. Go. Pack your things. Leave tonight. I can't. I won't abide this under my roof. Heart splintering, David nodded. Goodbye, Dad. He walked out into the blinding sun, the gravel crunching under his boots like bones. The town watched from porches and passing cars, whispers already weaving his exile into legend. Back at the parsonage, he threw clothes into the duffel, jeans worn soft, a flannel Austin loved to steal. His phone lit up, Austin again. Miss you. Everything okay? David's thumbs hovered, then typed, coming home. Need you. As the Ford's taillights faded down Elm Street, Willow Creek exhaled, but the fracture lingered, a hairline crack in the foundation of faith. Chicago welcomed David back with its symphony of horns and neon haze, a chaotic embrace that drowned the echo of his father's rejection. He pulled into the alley behind their building at dusk, the skyline a jagged crown against the purple sky. Austin was waiting on the fire escape, cigarette dangling from his lips, that easy grin faltering the moment he saw David's face. Jesus, Dave, what happened? He stubbed out the smoke, vaulting down to crush David in a hug that smelled of Marlboros and home. David's knees buckled, the dam breaking anew as he sobbed into Austin's shoulder, words tumbling out in a torrent. The funeral, the outburst, the banishment. Austin held him through it, murmuring nonsense comforts. Shoo, I've got you, cowboy, until the tears ebbed to hiccups. They climbed the stairs in silence, the apartment a sanctuary of clutter. Sketchpads strewn across the coffee table, a half-eaten pizza congealing on the counter, their cat, Whiskers, weaving figure eights around ankles. Inside, Austin poured whiskey, cheap stuff from the corner bodega, and they sank onto the sagging couch, David's head pillowed on Austin's thigh. He threw me out, David said, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin. Like I was trash. After everything, Austin's fingers carded through his hair, gentle as rain. He's scared, babe. Small-town preachers don't come with manuals for gay sons. Doesn't make it right, but human, David snorted. Human? He called it an affliction. Like I caught it from a bad handshake. They talked late into the night. Austin's story's a bomb. His own coming out at 17. The fistfight with his brother that ended in tears and acceptance. The pride parade where he'd first waved a rainbow flag. High on freedom. You're brave as hell, Austin said finally, kissing David's temple. Stood up in God's house and owned your truth. That's more than most ever do. Brave. The word settled uneasy in David's gut. In the mirror of memory, he saw a boy who'd learned to lie early, faking crushes on cheerleaders at prom, dodging sleepovers after football practice, burying journals under floorboards. Purdue had been a revelation. Diverse faces, late-night debates in dorms where gay was uttered without venom. But even there, he'd dated women on the sly, A performance for spring breaks back home. Austin had unraveled him, piece by patient piece. Their first real date, a Cubs game, cheap bleacher seats, Austin's hand brushing his during the seventh inning stretch. No fireworks, just quiet certainty, the way Austin's eyes crinkled when he teased, the solid warmth of him in bed, no pretenses. They'd built from there, road trips to Iowa for corn mazes, Thanksgiving with Austin's sprawling Irish clan who plied them with potatoes and zero questions, whispered I love yous under Star Wars sheets. Now, in the afterglow of crisis, that love anchored him. They made love slow and deliberate, Austin mapping David's body like a cartographer charting new lands, kisses trailing collarbones, hands reverent on hips, breaths mingling in the dark. You're mine, Austin whispered against his skin, a vow etched in sweat and sighs. David clung to it, to him, as if he could absorb the strength through osmosis. Days blurred into a fragile normalcy. David threw himself into work, drafting elevations for a lakeside condo that would house lives freer than his own. Austin landed a freelance gig designing logos for a queer youth nonprofit, his sketches vibrant with defiance, fists raised in rainbows, hearts pierced by arrows of light. Evenings were theirs, walks along the lakefront, where wind-off Michigan whipped secrets from their lungs. Dinners of Austin's experimental pasta, al dente disasters they laughed over with boxed wine. But the call came on a Tuesday, rain lashing the windows like judgment. David's cell buzzed mid-sketch, Dad flashing on the screen. He stared at it, heart hammering, until Austin nodded from across the room. Answer it, or it'll eat you. Jonathan's voice was clipped, formal. David, we need to talk. Properly. I'm in Chicago for a conference. Tomorrow, noon. The Palmer House. Don't make me regret this. The line went dead, leaving David adrift in static. Austin pulled him close. Want me to come? No. This is mine to fix or bury. The Palmer House lobby was a relic of Gilded Age opulence. Crystal chandeliers dripping light, Persian rugs muffling footsteps, the air scented with polish and privilege. David spotted his father at a corner table, nursing coffee, tie loosened like a noose half-slipped. Jonathan looked diminished in the city's grandeur, shoulders slumped, eyes ringed with fatigue. They shook hands, awkward as strangers. You look well, Jonathan said, stirring sugar he wouldn't drink. Likely story. David sat, folding napkin into origami tension. Why now? Exhale, long and labored. The church. It's fracturing. Half the board wants my head, say I should have known, kept it in the family. The other half preaches forgiveness, but their eyes. They watch me like I'm tainted. He met David's gaze, raw for the first time. And I miss your mother. Every damn breath. She was the glue, David. Without her, I'm just hollow. The confession cracked something in David, pity mingling with pain. You miss her. Not me. Jonathan flinched. I miss the boy I raised. The one who built birdhouses with me, quoted psalms like poetry. This other life. It's not you. David leaned forward, voice steady. It is me. That. The core of me. Austin, he's part of that. Kind. Funny. Challenges me to be better. We fight over stupid shit, like who hogs the blankets, but we choose each other every day. That's love. Not the fairy tale you preached, but real. Messy. Holy. Even. Jonathan's jaw tightened, fingers drumming the saucer. "The Bible isn't a hammer," David cut in. "Mom taught me that. Remember her garden? How she'd whisper to the roses, say God spoke through beauty, not just thunder? I hear him in Austin's laugh, in the way we hold each other through storms, silence stretched, taut as a bowstring." Jonathan's eyes glistened, tears or trick of the light. "I failed you," he murmured. "Tried to save the world. Lost my son." David reached across, hand hovering before clasping his father's. "Not lost. Just found." They parted with a tentative truce. Emails, not sermons. Visits, not verdicts. Jonathan returned to Willow Creek. David to his blueprints. Hope flickered, fragile as a match in wind. But betrayal brews in shadows. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at the apartment, brown paper, no return address. Inside, printouts of David's old journals, scanned and annotated in red ink, verses scrawled in margins like indictments. Leviticus 18 verse 22. At the bottom, a note in familiar script, "For your own good. Let the elders guide you." Elder Hargrove. David's blood ran cold. Mrs. Hargrove, the organist, his boyhood confidant. How? The floorboards, the hidden pages. He'd retrieved them before leaving, or so he thought. Panic clawed his throat. Austin found him on the fire escape, papers clutched like evidence. "Who?" Austin demanded, fury etching his features. "The church. Dad's board. They dug." Austin's arm around him was steel. "We'll fight this. Lawyers. Pride lawyers. Hell, I'll design the picket signs." But David saw the fracture widening. Trust, once cracked, spiderwebbed. He called Jonathan that night, voice steel. "Did you know?" A pause. Too long. "David. Yes or no?" "No. But I mentioned our talk. In confidence. To the deacons. For prayer." The line hummed with betrayal's sting. "Prayer. Right. You handed me to the wolves. Son." David hung up, the click final as a gavel. The man who'd sired him had, unwittingly or not, unleashed the hounds. Willow Creek's judgment, digitized and disseminated, now haunted his inbox. Anonymous emails, scripture spam, even a call from Purdue alumni warning of reputational risk. Austin rallied, fierce as a lion, blocking numbers, drafting cease and desists, dragging David to a support group in Boys Town where stories echoed his own. Rejections, reclamations. "You're not alone," the facilitator said, a burly ex-Marine with tattoos peeking from sleeves. "Family's what you build, not what's born." Yet doubt gnawed. Late nights, David paced, whiskey-burning paths of regret. "What if I dragged you into this?" he asked Austin one dawn, city lights painting their bedroom in silver. Austin pulled him down, eyes fierce. "I'd dive into hell for you, Dave. This is a blip. Our story's just starting." Summer waned, leaves turning crimson warnings. An invitation arrived, embossed. Official Willow Creek Homecoming Revival. All welcome. Redeem and restore. Jonathan's signature looped at the bottom. David stared at it, torn between ashes and absolution. Austin squeezed his hand. "Go if you need to. But come back to me." The drive south was an unraveling reel. Radio preaching fire, billboards hawking salvation. Willow Creek greeted him with harvest fair banners, pumpkins grinning from porches. The church lot brimmed with cars, tents fluttering like flags of fervor. Inside, the sanctuary pulsed with song, amazing grace in fervent four-part harmony. Jonathan spotted him in the back row, faltering mid-verse. The service swelled. Testimonies of transformation, altar calls for the struggling. Then the sermon, Jonathan at the pulpit, voice resonant. Beloved, we've weathered storms, he intoned. Division in our ranks, doubts in our hearts. But God calls us to unity, not in compromise, but in truth. His eyes locked on David. Even when a prodigal returns, we extend the robe, the ring, not to affirm sin, but to offer healing. David's stomach twisted. Healing, the word a euphemism for erasure. As the choir swelled for the close, he rose again, slower this time, deliberate. Whispers hushed. He walked the aisle, not to shout, but to stand mere feet from the pulpit, chin lifted. Dad, he said, voice carrying clear. I'm here. Not to heal. To be seen. Jonathan's face crumpled, a war of love and doctrine raging. The congregation held, breath collective. David, I'm gay. And I'm your son. Can you love both? The question hung, a gauntlet thrown. Jonathan stepped down, hand trembling as it clasped David's shoulder. I do. God help me, I do. Tears traced paths down both faces, father and son, locked in fragile grace. Applause scattered, tentative, then thunderous. Not all, some stormed out, doors banging judgment, but enough stayed, heads bowed in quiet revolution. Outside, under harvest moon, Jonathan pulled David aside. Forgive an old fool? David nodded, throat tight. We're both learning. The ride back to Chicago was lighter, wind through open windows carrying possibility. Austin waited with beer and a grin. How'd it go? Preacher's kid. David kissed him, deep and sure. Like redemption. Real kind. Fall deepened into winter's grasp. Chicago's winds howling elegies through the canyons of steel and glass. David and Austin's life settled into a rhythm punctuated by small triumphs. A promotion for David, leading a team on a sustainable farm project that echoed his rural roots. Austin's nonprofit gig evolving into a full-time role, his designs adorning billboards for marriage equality drives. Their apartment bloomed with life, houseplants thriving on windowsills, a rainbow flag tacked above the bed, photos of them pinned to a corkboard. Lake Michigan beaches, Austin's sister's wedding where they danced as just friends to prying eyes. But reconciliation with Jonathan was a tightrope, every step a test of balance. Emails flowed steadier, updates on church potlucks, David's sketches forwarded for input. A visit came in November. Jonathan arriving by train, bundled in wool, eyes wide at the city's pulse. They met at a neutral ground, a diner in Lincoln Park, formica tables sticky with history. He brought a care package, Evelyn's apple butter, a carved wooden cross for your mantle. Conversation skirted edges, weather, work, until Jonathan broached the chasm. I've been reading, he admitted, stirring tea. Books. About your community. God and the gay Christian. Challenging. David's fork paused midair. And a shrug. Shoulders heavy. Makes me question. The verses I wielded, they're threads in a tapestry, not the whole cloth. Your mother always said context matters. Austin, invited along, chimed in with easy charm. Context is everything, Rev. Like how Jesus hung with outcasts. No fire and brimstone there. Jonathan eyed him appraisingly, then extended a hand. Austin. Pleasure. David's told me. Bits. The meal stretched, tentative bridges forming over pie and coffee. Jonathan even cracked a smile at Austin's tale of their disastrous attempt at Thanksgiving turkey. Smoke alarms blaring, neighbors pounding walls. Sounds like my first sermon, he chuckled. Fumbled the notes, but Grace covered it. Driving him to the station later, David felt the thaw. Thanks for coming. Jonathan clasped his arm at the platform. Family's worth the frostbite, son. Christmas brought a milestone, Jonathan's invitation to Willow Creek. The whole holiday. Bring Austin. Show me how you do it. David hesitated, ghosts of sermons past whispering caution. But Austin squeezed his hand under the tree they decorated with mismatched ornaments. Let's make new memories, babe. Rewrite the script. The parsonage glowed with lights, wreaths on every door. Willow Creek's snow blanketed the world in hush, muffling old grudges. Jonathan greeted them at the curb, apron dusted with flour he'd baked. Inside, the air hummed with cinnamon and pine, a menorah on the sideboard a nod to Austin's Jewish mom. Dinner was a revelation. Turkey carved with stories, not silences. Jonathan asked about Austin's art, genuinely, leaning in as sketches unfolded on the table, rainbow motifs bold and unapologetic. Powerful, he murmured. Reminds me of Ezekiel's visions, color in the chaos. Later, by the fire, with eggnog warming palms, the talk turned tender. I was wrong, Jonathan said, staring into flames. All those years, thundering from the pulpit. I thought I was shielding you, David, from pain, from hell. But I built the cage myself. David's throat tightened. I know that. We heal together. Austin, ever the bridge, pulled out his phone, pulling up a playlist of carols, queer anthems mixed in. O Holy Night segued to Same Love, and Jonathan listened, unmoving, until the chorus hit, no matter gay or straight. A tear escaped, swiped away quick. The new year dawned with tentative alliances. Jonathan started a book study at church, not on condemnation, but compassion. Stories of LGBTQ faithful, dialogues on love's spectrum. Whispers rippled. Some elders balked, calling it soft heresy. But attendance held, curiosity a quiet convert. Spring unfurled green and hopeful. David and Austin planned a road trip, Route 66 echoes, from Chicago to California, chasing horizons. Jonathan gifted gas money, a card reading go forth and multiply the joy. But joy's underbelly is fragility. In May, a letter arrived at the parsonage, forwarded to David, anonymous, typed on church letterhead. We know your secret, Reverend. The board will hear of your tolerance. Resign or repent. Attached, photos, grainy shots of David and Austin at a pride rally last summer. Arms linked, faces alight. Panic surged. David drove south unannounced, pounding the parsonage door at midnight. Jonathan answered in pajamas, bleary-eyed. Son, what's? They're coming for you. David thrust the envelope, collapsing into the kitchen chair as Jonathan scanned it. Fury bloomed on his face, then sorrow. The betrayers, he muttered. Jenkins's nephew runs the print shop. Must have tailed you. David's voice broke. This is my fault. I poisoned your world. Jonathan knelt, hands on knees, reversing roles, father to prodigal. No. It's theirs. Fears the poison. David. I've swallowed enough to know. Dawn brought strategy. Jonathan confronting the board at emergency session, packet in hand. Blackmail in God's house? This ends now. He revealed the plot, not the photos, protecting David, framing it as attack on his ministry. Votes swung. The culprit exposed, shamed into confession, the faction splintering. But the cost lingered. Jonathan tendered notice weeks later. A quiet exit framed as seeking new calling. Willow Creek mourned, then moved on, new pastor installed. Progressive whispers gaining ground. David flew down for the farewell sermon. Austin beside him in the front pew. Jonathan spoke not of fire, but fields. I've tilled hard soil. Brothers. Learned grace grows in unlikely places. Love your neighbor as yourself. No exceptions. After, in the emptying sanctuary, father and son embraced, Austin joining the huddle. Proud of you, David whispered. Jonathan pulled back, eyes clear. And I of you. Both of you. Summer hummed with reinvention. Jonathan relocated to Indianapolis, volunteering at a faith-based LGBTQ center, counseling couples, hosting dialogues. David and Austin bought a ring, simple bands, exchanged in a backyard ceremony with friends. Jonathan officiating in rainbow stole borrowed from the center. Yet climax loomed, unbidden. October brought a call. Jonathan, voice frail. Heart attack, son. Mild, they say. But come. David and Austin race south. Hospital sterile and stark. Jonathan lay pale against pillows. Monitors beeping metronome. Knew you'd come, he rasped, gripping David's hand. Always. Tears fell unashamed. He turned to Austin. Take care of him. He's stubborn as sin. Austin grinned through blur. Wouldn't have it any other way. In the waiting room, as machines hummed vigil, David confessed fears. What if we lose him now? After all this, Austin cupped his face. Then we honor him by living loud, loving fierce. That's the legacy. Jonathan rallied. Slow but sure, discharge to rehab. Walks in autumn leaves with his boys. By Thanksgiving, he carved turkey again. Jokes flying freer. But the true apex crested in December. A blizzard trapping them in the parsonage. Old home. New family. Power flickered. Candles casting golden halos. Stories spilled. Jonathan's youth. Wild oats sown before the call. Evelyn's quiet rebellions. Like hiding romance novels in hymnals. David's hidden heartaches. Austin's anthems of arrival. As snow piled silent witness, Jonathan raised a glass. To betrayals mended. To love that endures. They clinked, tears mingling with laughter. Outside, the world whitened anew, covering scars, promising spring. The new year ushered in with a deceptive calm. Chicago's skyline etched in frost against January's iron sky. David and Austin's life thrummed with purpose. David's firm greenlighting a community farm project in Englewood. Rows of urban soil where kids could plant more than concrete dreams. Austin's designs gracing a national campaign. Love is love. Billboards blooming across interstates like wildflowers defying drought. Their home, once a crash pad, evolved into haven, walls painted sage. Bookshelves groaning with titles from Giovanni's Room to The Velveteen Rabbit. A crib half-assembled in the corner for the foster journey they'd begun. Jonathan's recovery anchored the triad. From Indy, he sent weekly videos, him leading a support circle, voice steady as he unpacked Paul's thorn in the flesh, reframed as struggle, not shame. "Your old man's learning to listen," he'd say, winking at the camera. Visits wove tighter. Easter brunch at the parsonage. Now a cozy duplex with garden plots where Jonathan coaxed tomatoes from clay, muttering prayers to the dirt. Yet beneath the mending, fissures simmered. Whispers from Willow Creek trickled back. Ex-deacons forming a splinter flock, branding Jonathan the compromiser. Their pamphlets decrying the gay lobby's infiltration. David caught wind via a concerned email from Mrs. Hargrove. Post-redemption, their rallying signatures. "Watch your father." David drove down alone, Austin buried in deadlines. The duplex door swung open to Jonathan's grin, but shadows bruised his eyes. "Heard the buzz?" David asked, hugging him fierce. "Old news, son. Like kudzu spreads fast, but roots shallow." They walked the garden, shears snipping deadheads, talk turning to thorns. "It hurts," Jonathan admitted, kneeling in mulch. "Men I baptized, broke bread with, calling me Judas now." David crouched beside him. "Then fight. Not with sermons, but stories. Ours." Jonathan nodded, dirt-streaked face resolute. "Already started. Podcast Grace Unbound. First episode drops next week. You in Austin. Guests. The idea ignited. They recorded in the living room, mics jury-rigged from thrift lamps. Austin joined via Zoom, his curls a halo in pixel light. They shared raw, David's aisle stand, Jonathan's pulpit pivot, Austin's bridge building. "Love isn't zero-sum," Austin said. "Earnest. There's room for all at the table, even the loudmouth preachers." The episode launched to modest waves, downloads ticking up, emails pouring in, "Thank you. Saved my marriage. My kid came out today, your words gave me courage." But backlash crashed like surf. Hate mail, voicemails snarling slurs, a petition drive to revoke Jonathan's ordination. Climax brewed in June, heat wave baking the Midwest to tinder. Willow Creek announced their restoration revival, a weekend crusade headlined by a firebrand televangelist, flyers plastered on poles, "Reclaim our purity. No compromise." Jonathan's name was absent, but the subtext screamed, "Traitor's folly." David felt the pull, magnetic and malignant. "We go," he told Austin over diner fries, ketchup bleeding red. "Confront it head-on. Show them the human cost." Austin's brow furrowed. "Risky, babe. Mobs and mics could go south fast." But David's resolve hardened, forged in that funeral fire. Jonathan agreed, voice steel over speakerphone. "Time to stand, sons." Together, they arrived Friday eve, the fairgrounds' tented colossus pulsing with floodlights and fervor. Air thick with fried dough and fanaticism, congregants milling like pilgrims, faces familiar, twisted in zeal. David, Austin, Jonathan checked into a roadside motel, neon vacancy buzzing omen. Saturday dawned muggy, the revival's marquee screaming truth in triumph. They slipped in mid-morning, back row shadows. The evangelist, Pastor Vance, slick-suited with a megaphone voice, thundered from the platform. "Sodom marches on our streets, gay agendas in our schools, our churches. But we say no, repent or perish." Cheers erupted, fists pumping scripture. David gripped Austin's hand, knuckles bone-white. Jonathan's jaw clenched, but he rose slow, deliberate hand raised for mic. Vance paused, smirk curling. Ah, the prodigal preacher. Come to recant. Jonathan climbed steps, voice amplified calm. No, Vance. To testify. Murmurs swelled as he faced the crowd. 500 souls, many willow kin. I stood here once, like you, wielding words as weapons. Denounced the other to feel righteous. But righteousness without mercy is rot. Gasps rippled. David and Austin flanked him now, ascending in solidarity. Austin's presence, openly affectionate, arm around David's waist, drew hisses, but Jonathan pressed on. This is my son, David. And his partner, Austin. Men of faith, of love. I betrayed them with silence, then sermons. Nearly lost them to pride's poison. But God, He met me in the mess. Showed me love's not ledgered, but lavish. Vance snatched the mic. Blasphemy. Leviticus. Leviticus also commands against mixed fabrics. Jonathan shot back. Crowd tittering uneasy. And shellfish. We cherry-pick to condemn. Brothers. But Jesus, He dined with tax collectors, touched lepers. Loved without litmus. David stepped forward, heart pounding. I grew up in this town, these pews. Hid who I am until it nearly killed me. Dad's words, your words, cut deep. But healing, that's in honesty. In seeing us as sons, not sinners. Austin added, voice steady, we're not the enemy. Fear is. And love casts it out. Chaos ignited. Shouts of amen, clashing with heretic. Deacons surging to eject. Fists flew. Jenkins's nephew lunging at Jonathan. David shoving back. Austin pulling them clear. Security swarmed. Vance bellowing from safety. But the tent fractured. Half streaming out in protest. The rest frozen in fracture. Outside, under sodium lamps, breaths heaved. A young woman approached, 18, trembling, rainbow pin hidden in palm. Thank you, she whispered. I'm like you. And terrified, David hugged her fierce. You're not alone. Jonathan, bruised lip swelling, clapped their shoulders. We stirred the pot. Now we serve the stew. The drive back was debrief in headlights. Wounds inventoried. Wins tallied. Downloads spiked. Grace unbound trending local. Interviews requested. But betrayal's shadow lengthened. Monday brought news. Vance's network digging. Unearthing Jonathan's ties to activists. Sponsors pulled. Podcast hosted threatened shutdown. Worse. A call to David from an unknown number. Tell your old man to back off, or we air the family laundry. Those journals? Just the start. David's blood iced. The journals, Hargrove's betrayal redux? He confronted Jonathan, who paled. I burned them. After the funeral. Swear it. Doubt seated. Austin, sensing rift. Mediated. Trusts earned daily. Let's verify. They traced the threat, IP from Willow. Voice modulator cheap. Culprit. A disgruntled elder. Grudge nursed since the board oust. Confronted. He crumbled. Confessing to forgeries. Stitched fakes from old letters. Desperate for leverage. Relief washed. But scars itched. How many times? David asked Austin that night. City lights mocking from afar. Before we break? Austin traced his jaw. We don't. Bend. Yes. Shatter? Never. Summer solstice brought pivot. Jonathan accepting a chaplaincy at a Chicago queer center. Relocating north. Closer to my boys, he quipped. Boxes piled in the duplex drive. The move weekend was sweat and stories, hauling furniture, unearthing Evelyn's diaries. Pages yellowed with wisdom. Love covers multitudes. Let it. They settled him in a walk-up near Boys Town. Walls soon papered with art. Austin's originals. David's farm sketches. Fall harvested bounty. David and Austin's foster application approved. Little Jamie, 6, wide-eyed with questions, joining their fold. Jonathan doted. Bedtime stories laced with parables of acceptance. But winter whispered warning. December. Jonathan collapsed again. Stent scare. Doctor stern. Stress. Reverend. Slow down. David blamed the revival. Guilt gnawing. We pushed too hard. Jonathan waved it off from hospital bed. Nonsense. Pushed right. Life's not longevity. It's legacy. Discharge brought family pact. Boundaries. Self-care. Holidays healed. Hanukkah lax melting into Christmas ham. Jamie lighting candles with chubby awe. Spring 2007 bloomed betrayal's echo. Anonymous blog surfaced, Willow Watch, doxing the Hale heresy. David's firm targeted with boycotts. Austin's clients spooked. Climax redux. A town hall in Willow. Vance rallying for moral purity ordinance. Banning gay propaganda in schools. Libraries. Jonathan, invigorated, rallied counter. Faith forward. Interfaith march drawing hundreds. Queer elders. Straight allies. Jamie's tiny hand in David's. The ordinance failed. 52-48. A razor victory. But Vance cornered Jonathan post-vote. Venom low. This ain't over. Traitor. Your blood's on you. David overheard. Fury flaring. Touch him. You touch us all. Vance sneered. Family? That's your delusion. The drive home was vow-forged. We end this, Austin said. Legal. Public. They sued. Defamation. Harassment lawyers pro bono from the center. Discovery unearthed Vance's web. Payoffs from hate groups. Forgeries funded dark. Trial summer scorched. Courtroom a coliseum. Testimonies tore open. David's stand. Jonathan's pivot. Jamie's innocent Uncle Austin's my hero. Vance crumbled on cross. Lies unraveling like cheap thread. Verdict. Guilty. Restitution ordered. Network severed. Willow exhaled. Fractures mending slow. In aftermath, Jonathan penned a book, From Pulpit to Embrace, bestseller in niche circles. Forward by Austin. Loves the sermon we all need. David and Austin married proper, Vegas whim. Elvis officiant. Jonathan beaming ringside. Jamie flowered boy. Family whole. Yet humanism's heart beats in imperfection. Years on. Doubts lingered. Jonathan's sermons softened. But scriptures wrestled nightly. David's triggers flared at church bells. Austin's laugh masked old wounds. One eve, porch swing creaking. Jonathan reflected. We didn't win. We endured. David nodded. Austin's head on shoulder. That's victory enough. Time's river carved canyons in their story. Years folding like accordion bellows, expansive, then intimate. By 2015, Chicago had shed its chrysalis. Obergefell v. Hodges enshrining marriage nationwide. Rainbows draping parades like confetti from heaven. David and Austin's farm project burgeoned into a network. Urban oases feeding bodies and souls. Jamie, now 12, freckled firebrand, volunteering weekends, dirt under nails, dreams of vet school sprouting wild. Jonathan, graying gracefully at 70, pastored a progressive congregation in Boys Town, sanctuary of the open heart. Pews filled with the marginalized, trans youth, immigrant families, elders reclaiming faith from trauma. His book spawned sequels, speaking tours threading the nation, voice a beacon in Bible Belt backwaters. Grace isn't given, it's grown, he'd say, audiences nodding, some weeping. Their bond deepened in dailies, Sunday suppers with Jamie's soccer tales, holidays blending traditions, Passover Seder with ham hocks on the side, Jonathan donning elf ears for Jamie's delight. Betrayals faded to footnotes, scars badges of survival. But drama's echo resounds. 2018 brought Vance's shadow slinking back. Paroled early, reformed via a conversion camp, now podcasting purity renewed from a Tennessee trailer. Whispers online, digs at Hale's folly, veiled threats to Jamie's school. David monitored, jaw tight, Austin's hands steadying. We ignore, Austin counseled, overtake out Ty. He's yesterday's noise. Jonathan disagreed. Fire rekindled. Confront. Again. Show evolution. The reunion podcast, Grace vs. Grit, went viral, live-streamed to thousands. Vance in pixel purgatory, face gaunt, ice fanatic gleam. I've seen the light anew. Jonathan. Repented my softness. You? Still peddling perversion. Jonathan leaned in, calm as Galilee. Light's not monopoly. Vance. I repented hate. Mine. Ours. You. Vance sputtered, veering to slurs. David crashed the feed. Unmuted. Enough. You hounded us. Forged lies. But here's truth. My dad's stronger for the bend. My husband's my rock. Our sons are light. Your purity? It's poison. Austin joined, quipping, and dude, get a new suit. That one's preaching poverty, not gospel. Chat exploded, emojis rainbowing, donations flooding Jonathan's center. Vance rage quit, feed cutting to black. But the clip memed eternal. Hale Heart 1, Vance Venom 0. Afterglow brought introspection. Jamie, eavesdropping, cornered David. Was Grandpa bad once? David knelt. Honest. He was human, kiddo. Learned love the hard way. Like us all. Summer 2020 tested metal anew. Pandemic locking worlds. Protests igniting streets. Willow Creek burned metaphorical. Vance's flock splintering amid BLM solidarity. Old guard clinging to crosses as shields. Jonathan Zoom preached hope. David organized food drives from rooftop gardens. Austin designed masks emblazoned breathe free. Isolation forged closeness. Virtual game nights. Jonathan's guitar strums through screens. Jamie's virtual science fairs cheered raucous. But loss nipped. Evelyn's birthday. A quiet toast to ghosts. Climax crested autumnal. Jonathan's diagnosis. Prostate. Aggressive. Stage 3. He announced over backyard fire pit. Embers mirroring eyes. Treatments start Monday. David's world tilted. Austin's arm anchor. Jamie's hug fierce. We'll fight, David vowed. Battle joined. Chemo suites sterile battlegrounds. Jonathan quipping through nausea. Beats Vance's sermons. David shuttled. Austin cooked broth. Jamie drew cards. Superheroes with stethoscopes. Remission whispered spring 2021. Tentative as crocuses. Celebratory picnic. Park under dogwoods. Blankets spread. Laughter bubbling like champagne. Jonathan raised Jared T. to second X. But humanism humbles. Relapse hit hard. Mets to bones. Hospice talk hushed. Summer waned. Jonathan frail in hospice bed. Monitors soft sighs. David and Austin rotated vigils. Jamie summer camp to shield. Final days. Room bloomed flowers. Congregants lilies. Austin's daisies. David's wild asters. Jonathan rallied for words. David. Proud. You stood, son. Taught me standings in the heart. David choked. Holding hand veined maps. Love you, Dad. Austin at bedside. You bridged worlds. Rev. Heaven's gain. Jonathan's gaze lingered on Jamie. Video called. Be brave. Sprout. Love big. Eyes closed peaceful. Breath easing to eternity. October 15th, 2022. Eclipse casting world in twilight. Fitting farewell. Funeral drew multitudes. Boys Town marchers. Willow defectors. Vance absent but condemned in obituary quip. David eulogized. He denounced shadows till light found him. Denounced no more, embraced all. Graveside. Under Indiana oaks. Dirt soft as forgiveness. They lowered him beside Evelyn. Jamie scattered seeds. Sunflowers. John's favorite. They'll grow tall. Dad. Aftermath ached. But romance renewed. David and Austin honeymooned late. Bermuda sands. Hands entwined. Healing in turquoise. Jamie thrived. Therapy weaving loss to legacy. Years unspooled. 2025. David 48. Silver threading hair. Austin ageless mischief. Jamie 18. College bound. Girlfriend's hand in his. Circle wide. Willow Creek transformed, new pastor ally. Pride flags on steeples. David visited yearly. Parsonage now community center. Plaques. Hail legacy. Love unbound. One eve. Sunset gilding fields. He stood where he'd risen that fateful Sunday. Austin beside. Think he'd approve? David mused. Austin kissed his temple. He does. Watching. Probably critiquing our form. Laughter echoed. Free. Betrayal's sting dulled to lessen. Conflict carves capacity. Romance roots resilience. Drama demands depth. In humanism's quiet close, they walked home. Sons of thunder turned bearers of dawn. Love, not lightning, the true sermon. Enduring. Eternal.